Chapter 1. The woman in the photo had delicate facial features. Her skin was delicate and fair, and the white work shirt made her skin look as white as porcelain. In the photo, she was kneeling on the ground, holding a rag in both hands. She was seriously and meticulously doing her job as a hotel cleaner. She did the dirtiest and most tiring jobs in every city. However, she only had a calm and tranquil temperament. She was like a weed growing on a cliff. But anyone who knew what the woman in the photo had gone through couldn't help but admire her tenacious perseverance and extraordinary wisdom. But for the rich lady holding the photo, she hated it to the core. "Yiqian, do you want to live?" Let's see if I'm willing or not." An elegantly dressed young lady with bright red lipstick pursed her lips tightly. She stared at the photo with a cold gleam in her snake fangs, cold and vicious. "Yiqian, you shouldn't be alive," the rich lady said gloomily with a strong murderous intent. She wouldn't let go of someone who knew all of her secrets, even if it was her cousin. The lives of the poor were worthless. Those who shouldn't live should just disappear. She took away everything that belonged to Yiqian. Now that she was in a high position and married into a good family, she naturally had to play with her cousin who knew her secrets. Yiqian. She had no choice. If she died, it would be hard to explain to her husband who knew that she had a cousin who didn't do her job properly. "You didn't pass the probation period. The hotel has decided not to hire you. Pack your things in 3 days and get out of here." Yi Jian, who was 28 years old, was fired again after 2 months of work. She was just like in the photo. Her temperament was calm and tenacious. She stood straight in front of the hotel manager in the lobby. She didn't bend over because of the manager's words, nor did she panic because she lost a job. She was used to losing a job every 2 months. While she became cold, it also made her heart stronger. Yiqian calmly looked at the manager with her dark, obsidian-like eyes. She said faintly, "When will you pay me? We are a big listed company. How can your 2,000 yuan salary be small?" Manager Lu looked at the face in front of him that was so beautiful that it could make any man's heart flutter, and his heart itched badly. 10 minutes ago, he had been scolded by the HR manager because he had recruited a woman who had offended a big shot. He stared at Yiqian as he pulled open the drawer of his desk, took out an envelope, and threw it out. Yiqian threw the envelope containing his salary to the ground. His pupils constricted as he clenched his fists. The phone on the desk rang, and Manager Lu picked it up in a bad mood. Damn it, he had to turn off his phone later. "Manager Lu, I know you're a man who has tender feelings for women. Yiqian, who seduced his teacher at the age of 14, you should know what to do. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Just don't kill him." A gentle voice came from the phone. Hearing that voice, Manager Lu felt that the other party was a beauty. "Train her well. I'm happy. You want to be the vice president of the hotel? It's just a word from me." Stupid B***. She got involved with a man at the age of 10, and she's still pretending to be a loyal woman in front of me. After hanging up the phone, Manager Lu's lust was aroused, and he became even more unbridled. He was so damn lucky. He had ordered someone to make Yiqian drink the drugged water. He wanted to forget about it after doing it once, but this phone call came at the right time. If he did it well, the wife of that big shot would be his backer in the future. Yiqian bent down to pick up the envelope containing her salary. Before her fingers touched the envelope, she looked up as if she had a premonition. Danger! Danger! She had to leave immediately. She had been able to survive until now because of her ability to react quickly to danger and avoid it. This was probably the only grace that life had bestowed upon her. At this moment, her body swayed without warning. Yiqian's alarm bells went off in her heart. Before she could stand up, an indescribable feeling of embarrassment spread through her limbs and bones. Her lower abdomen seemed to be on fire, and she fell down beside the desk. "Damn it, why are you pretending to be a pure woman? You're a B***th, who got involved with your own teacher at the age of 14. Someone told me to treat you well. Let's see how you're going to escape this time." The drugged Yiqian was pressed against the desk. She didn't struggle violently. She clutched her collar tightly with one hand and groped around the desk with the other. When she came in, she saw the display on the desk clearly. With just a glance, she could remember the things on the display, where they were placed, and which were things that could be used as tools for self-defense. For example, there were 7 pens, 2 pencils, and 3 fountain pens in the black leather pen holder. One of the fountain pens was not capped. 2 ballpoint pens. Oh, and there was also a pair of office scissors. 2 buttons on her shirt had been ripped off, and that pair of dirty hands was holding onto her collar. Her pearly white teeth bit down on her lower lip. Even if she bit it until it bled, she didn't let go. Pain could make her more clear-headed, and she wouldn't succumb to the drug. Yiqian was a woman who could fight with her life on the line, and she was also a woman who could be ruthless. At the age of 14, she was framed for seducing her own math teacher. So many years had passed, and no matter how much her cousin, who had married into a powerful family, had played dirty tricks, she still managed to survive. Today, whether or not she could survive, she had to fight for it. Yiqian, who hadn't wasted any energy struggling, grabbed the uncapped fountain pen and stabbed it hard into the man's arm. The sharp tip of the pen pierced into Manager Lu's arm. Caught off guard, the man screamed and let go of the pen. Yiqian, who was already battered and exhausted, picked up the envelope containing her salary without any emotion in her eyes. She dragged her weak legs and staggered away without looking at the beast whose arm was covered in blood. Before she could take 2 steps, the hair on the back of her head was grabbed. Damn it! How dare you hurt me? Manager Lu was a man after all. Even if he was injured, he still had the upper hand against a drugged woman. Bang! Yiqian, who was holding her head, was slammed onto the office desk. Immediately, warm liquid flowed out. Manager Lu was furious. He slammed Yiqian's head onto the desk again and again. He roared violently, "You shameless be***! I'm going to kill you today!" Yiqian knew that she had lost a lot of blood. Her head felt like it was going to shatter from the impact. She placed her hand on the office desk and reached for the scissors in the pen holder. The office phone was swept to the ground. If she moved forward a little more, she would have swept the pen holder over. Holding the scissors, Yiqian used the last of her strength and stabbed it into Manager Lu's chest with extreme precision. The sharp scissors accurately pierced his heart. Yiqian had cleaned the autopsy room at the medical school. She was a woman who was better at her professional classes than medical students who attended formal classes. She knew the structure of the human body very well. She couldn't just stab the scissors in, she had to pull them out. Only by pulling them out could the blood in the heart gush out like water from a high-pressure water gun. You want to save him? Maybe in your next life. Yiqian's face was covered in blood. Even her hair was drenched in blood. It was as if she had just walked out of hell. She leaned against the office desk with her eyes closed and felt for the office phone. Her bloody fingers pressed a string of numbers. Chapter 2. Shuku Village in Fujian Town was a village guarded by a troop deep in the mountains. In the middle of the night, the villagers of Shuku Village could faintly hear the sound of a truck. It was the sound of a military truck driving past the village entrance at night. It was past 2 in the morning, and the villagers were all sound asleep. Even if they heard it, they wouldn't deliberately wake up. Even if some people woke up, they would wait until they couldn't hear the sound before turning on the lights. The village chief had said that if anyone dared to disobey the rules, the road that the country had painstakingly repaired would be dug up. As for the person, he would be sent straight to jail and never be released. Yiqian had been awake for a long time. When she heard the sound of the military truck disappear, she endured her headache and climbed out of bed. She turned on the flashlight, and the flashlight shone on the wall with the calendar hanging on it. So, it really wasn't a dream. So, she could open her eyes again and see the sun tomorrow. So, the grace that life had bestowed upon her, and fate had arranged for her to grow through hardship and be reborn from the ashes, and not die so pathetically. Time ticked by. At 6 o'clock in the morning, smoke was already rising from the chimneys in Shuku Village. The mountain village bathed in the morning sun was lush and green, and the water gurgled. Outside the window, swallows flew and landed on the power lines, chirping happily. The clear morning sun passed through the thin mist and softly sprinkled down, making the flowers on the branches bloom even more brightly. The tender green buds and leaves supported the flowers, making the flowers on the branches look even more delicate and beautiful. Once again, she saw the flowers bloom in the warmth of spring and the return of the swallows. It was a completely different situation. Yi Qian woke up in the middle of the night and didn't go back to sleep. She looked at the girl sitting by her bed and chattering nonstop. Her dark eyes narrowed slightly. The girl in front of her had red lips and white teeth. Her black hair was braided and hung nimbly from her shoulders. Her eyes were watery, like autumn waves. Her skin was a little darker, and there were small spots on both sides of her nose. These two flaws weren't considered flaws, but she remembered that she had done a lot of post-production work on them. This was Yi Ying, the source of all the hardships in her previous life, the source of her unhappiness in life, and the source of her miserable death. I have an exam on Monday. Remember to help me. Also, I brought back all my homework from school. Hurry up and help me finish it. Yi Ying was born pretty and her voice was also pretty. It was as pleasant to listen to as an oriole. It was just that her tone was commanding, as if Yi Qian deserved it. Yi Qian hugged the blanket and watched as Yi Ying chattered away. He smiled and said, "Ying, long time no see." 14-year-old Ying, long time no see. Long time no see. He had just met him yesterday. You must have gone stupid from the fall. The 14-year-old Ying looked at her cousin who was half a year older than her and said worriedly, "You can't fall and become stupid. You're so beautiful. It'll be terrible if you fall and become stupid." She was so smart and smart. If she fell and became a fool, what would she do with her homework? Yi Qian's eyes curved into crescents. The corners of his mouth revealed a very, very faint smile, as clear as a stream. "If I fall and become stupid, won't you be worse off? There was no one to help you with your homework, no one to give you the answers to your exams, and no one to help you get a good ranking. Sigh, thinking about it, why do I feel like you'll be worse off?" While admiring the changing expressions on Yi Ying's face, Yi Qian chanted Amitabha in his heart. What a sin, what a sin. It felt so good to bully others. Why didn't she realize it before? As a 14-year-old again, she had to cherish this opportunity. "You really fell and became stupid. Do I need you to help me with my homework?" Yi Ying gritted her teeth and said unhappily when Yi Qian said what she was thinking. Her face was a mix of green and white. She tried hard to resolve her embarrassment, but in the end, she was still young and didn't have enough skills. It was inevitable that her expression would be a little twisted. Yi Qian looked at her expression and felt as if his withered heart had been injected with fresh blood. His whole person became much more lively. Chapter 3. In Yi Ying's eyes, it was as if she was going to apologize to her at any time. She lifted her chin slightly, waiting for Yi Qian to apologize. "It's been hard on you. You have to do your own things. I can't even refute you," Yi Qian said with a smile, looking helpless. She raised her hand and rubbed her head. Ignoring Yi Ying, who was so angry that her face was distorted, she asked her to leave. "I want to change my clothes. You can leave first." "Yi Qian, you bullied me." Yi Ying stood up, her watery eyes filled with tears. She looked delicate, but her actions were wild. She slammed the wooden door and left angrily. "Bullied? Ying, I told you, just you wait." She was putting on her clothes slowly when she heard Yi Ying's pitiful cries from the courtyard. She was complaining to her mother. Yi Jian counted to 3 in her heart. When Yi Jian counted to 3, Sun Dongqing rushed in with a bamboo stick in her hand. She glared at Yi Jian and shouted angrily, "Stupid girl, you freeload in my house and bully your sister? Little brat, don't let me feed you until you become an ingrate." She rushed in front of Yi Qian. The bamboo stick was not aimed at his body, but at his face. How much hatred did she have for him? If she didn't hit him well, he would go blind. Yi Qian had already dodged when the bamboo stick was about to hit his face. She had returned to her 14-year-old self. She would not allow herself to be hit again, nor would she allow anyone to hit her. No one could. Yi Ying even needs me to do her homework. It wasn't easy for me to persuade her to do her own things. Aunt, aren't you going to thank me? Why are you hitting me? Sun Dongqing was both an aunt and an aunt. Two sisters married into the same family. They were sisters in their mother's family and sisters-in-law in their husband's family. Oh, you dare to dodge? You didn't fall to your death yesterday, but today you know how to anger me. Sun Dongqing glared. She rolled up her sleeves and picked up the bamboo stick. Stupid girl, your mother isn't here anymore. I have to teach you a lesson. What a disgrace, seducing your own teacher at such a young age. You should have been thrown out last night. Don't lead my Yingying astray. Sun Dongqing had always been merciless to the daughter left behind by her elder sister. In her maternal family, she was proud and arrogant. She was bound to win in front of her elder sister. Now, there was only one orphan left in her elder sister's house. Shouldn't she discipline her properly? Her words made Yi Jian's eyes turn cold. Her delicate little face tensed up with a frosty expression. Seducing a teacher. When she woke up last night and looked at the wall calendar, she realized that she had returned to the spring when she was 14 years old. The first month of school was when the peach blossoms were in full bloom. That year, when she was 14 years old, she went to call Yiying home from school. When she came out, she bumped into Yiying, who was running towards her. Before she could say a word, she was pulled by Yiying and started running. After running for a few dozen meters, she was tripped by Yiying. When she fell, her forehead hit a moss-covered rock and she fainted on the spot. When she woke up, it was already Sunday morning, and there was a scandal about her seducing her teacher. And now, he woke up on Friday night. The difference between 1 day and 2 nights was the key to her life. Chapter 4. Sun Dongqing's rushing footsteps came to an abrupt halt when she saw the pair of sharp scissors shining with a cold light. She saw the viciousness on Yi Qian's face and the coldness in his eyes. For no reason her heart skipped a beat. Her hand, which was holding the bamboo stick up high, dropped instantly. And, before the matter is investigated thoroughly, don't make a fuss about making my life difficult. I'm not afraid that the whole family will suffer because of me. Yi Qian said coldly. His eyes were very dark, even darker than the night sky. His eyes were especially bright as the stars. When he stared fiercely, the color in his eyes changed. His eyes were like the ever-changing aurora. Although they were beautiful, they made people feel fearful. Stupid girl, let's see how long you can keep up your pretense. When the teacher comes looking for you, you can explain yourself. Facing Yi Qian's viciousness, Sun Dongqing's heart skipped a beat. Subconsciously she thought, did Yingying lie? As the thought flashed through her mind, Sun Dongqing hurriedly stopped herself. Impossible. Yingying had always been obedient. It was impossible for her to lie. No, she had to ask Yingying. Sun Dongqing thought of the seriousness of this matter. She threw the bamboo stick down and walked out. This matter happened to Yi Qian. She wasn't anxious at all. After all, she wasn't her daughter. Her mother-in-law also hated this granddaughter to death. Sun Dongqing didn't know why, but she felt very anxious. She felt that something bad was going to happen. Yi Qian coldly watched her leave. The corners of his mouth curved slightly. In the mirror, she saw her own 14-year-old face clearly. Although her facial features were delicate, there was still a hint of youthfulness. However, the smile on the corners of her lips was already filled with the vicissitudes of life. Her gaze softened slightly. Her faint eyes had an extremely cold look. She looked up and saw Sun Dongqing hurriedly chase out of the courtyard. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared from her sight. Yi Qian coldly retracted his gaze. He found a comb and began to comb his black hair. Being this time, watch carefully. Back then, I let you off because of a momentary lapse in judgment. Now, I will definitely make you beg for death. Under the peach blossom tree outside the house, Yiying, who was folding peach branches, was frightened by Sun Dongqing's voice. She pouted unhappily. Mom, you scared me. Sun Dongqing couldn't bear to say harsh words to her daughter, so she asked in a low voice, What did you say when you came back yesterday? What's going on? What do you mean? Yiying lowered her head, the tip of her nose gently touching the delicate peach petal. She hid the panic in her eyes. How would I know what's going on? Come in and tell me. Sun Dongxing looked around and made sure that no one was around. Then, she pulled her daughter into her bedroom and began to interrogate her. Yi Qian, who came out from the other side of the house, watched the mother and daughter tugging and pulling each other into the house. With a faint smile on his lips, he walked out of Sun Dongxing's house. This was not her home. Her house was located in the innermost part of the village, next to a bamboo forest. Every brick and tile had been added by her parents when they were still alive. Before the age of 4, it was heaven. In front of the house, there was a garden full of peach blossoms. Behind the house, there was the sound of bamboo waves. She sat under the peach blossom tree, resting her chin on her hands as she watched her mother read a poem aloud. Her eyelids gradually drooped as she fell asleep. Her father, who had just returned from digging up spring bamboo shoots, was beside her, peeling bamboo shoots while laughing. Occasionally he would laugh and say, "Jane is like you. She likes to read." Her heavenly happiness came to an abrupt end at the age of 4. Yi Qian, who was reminiscing until tears flowed from his eyes, saw a villager walking over and quickly wiped the corners of his eyes. Before Yi Qian could greet the villagers, who were busy in spring, they surrounded her and asked about her health. "Aya, Miss Jian, you're awake? Does your head still hurt?" Chapter 5. In the face of their concern, Yi Qian rubbed her forehead in embarrassment. "It doesn't hurt anymore. I just accidentally tripped over Yi Ying. Maybe I was too nervous about the exam at noon and fainted from the shock." "You child, why are you nervous about the exam? Yi Ying is good at studying. Let her copy the exam for you." The villagers began to tease her. They all felt pity for this orphan girl who had no parents and was living in her uncle's house. Now, their gazes were kind and friendly, instead of pointing fingers at him. Yi Qian pursed her lips slightly and pretended to twirl her hair uneasily. She lowered her head and muttered, "She handed in the exam paper a long time ago. I couldn't copy it even if I wanted to. I only dared to hand in the exam paper when the bell rang." Her words made the villagers burst into laughter. Little Jian was an honest person. However, they did not know that Yi Qian was already paving the way for what would happen next. "Uncle, Auntie, I'm going home to take a look. Please take care of yourself." Yi Qian thanked them politely. Her delicate face had a slight smile. "I haven't been home for a long time. I'm going to tidy up." The villagers then realized that she was going back to her home in the village. "Uncle Zhen should be there. He has a dog. Remember to shout before you enter the house." Yi Qian naturally remembered. She still remembered how she was wronged and ran home crying. A big black dog barked and rushed out. If Uncle Zhen had not appeared in time, she would have been bitten by the black dog. Later, Uncle Zhen told her that the black dog was not a dog. It was an underage Tibetan mastiff. Looking through the layers of peach blossoms, Yi Qian saw her home hidden in the depths of the sea of flowers. It was exactly the same as in her memory. The greenish-black roof tiles and the white walls were as good as new. It was the time when the peach blossoms were in full bloom. The spring breeze caressed her face and the petals danced in the wind. Yi Qian walked through the rain of flowers and walked out of the peach blossom forest to return to her home. Grandpa Zhen, Grandpa Yi Qian, who was just a few steps away from the peach forest, raised his voice. Haiga was a Tibetan mastiff. He had to shout in advance to prevent the same thing from happening in his previous life. She had jogged over, and before anyone could respond, she had already left the peach blossom forest. Yi Jian stopped in her tracks and looked at the 4 unfamiliar men who were sitting in the field and eating noodles. He nodded slightly and asked, "Is Grandpa Zhen here?" She only glanced at it once before lowering her gaze. She saw someone raise his hand and quickly take something off the wooden table. It was a gun. Looking down again, the 4 of them were wearing boots that ordinary people wouldn't wear. They were military boots. They were sitting upright, with their backs as straight as a poplar tree. Also, their hairstyles were crew cut, which was the uniform crew cut in the army. These 4 people were all soldiers. They sat in front of their house with smiles on their faces. They seemed to be chatting casually about something. Because of her appearance, the 4 of them were surprised. Uncle Zhen, who had a piece of cloth around his waist that had been washed white, smiled and said, "Come, come, Lao and pickled cabbage. I know you guys. Hey, Miss Jen." It was a girl from the village. The four of them quickly stood up. One of the men with square features, who seemed to be the leader of the four, laughed and said, "Don't be afraid, little girl. We're not bad people." Of course she knew that they were not bad people. Besides, what kind of bad people had she not seen before? Chapter 6. Yi Qian nodded slightly and smiled at them. He did not show any fear of strangers. Instead, he walked over to Uncle Jen, who was holding a few plates, and said softly, "I'll carry them. Your foot is not good. It hurts when spring comes. It's better for you to sit down." When these words fell into the ears of the four soldiers who had stood up, it was really unpleasant. They all knew that Elder Jen's father's foot was not good. Elder Jen's foot was injured on the battlefield. When spring and winter came, it would hurt badly. This time, they came back to give Elder Jen's father a special cold-dispelling medicinal wine. However, they had just finished cooking the noodles and had not eaten a single bite when they saw a young girl suddenly appear in front of them. She had misunderstood them. Elder Jen was surprised. How did the little girl know that his foot was not good? No one in the village knew about it. It's fine. You just need to take care of yourself." Elder Jen was naturally referring to the incident where Yi Qian fell and fainted yesterday. However, there were other people present, so he did not say it out loud to save the little girl's face. Yi Qian pursed his lips and revealed an unnatural smile. "It's just an accident. Thank you for worrying." She nimbly placed a few plates of sour and refreshing pickled cabbage on the wooden table. Then, she skillfully dripped some sesame oil on the table and added a spoonful of red chili oil. Not only was the pickled cabbage fragrant, but its color also became more vibrant. The bottle of soy sauce on the bed was not screwed shut. Yi Qian also screwed the lid shut. There were not many children in the village who were pampered. Children who did not have parents did not have the right to be pampered. Elder Jen looked at the young girl. Although she was thin and weak, she worked as if she had worked for more than 10 years. He felt a little sad and sighed softly, "Little girl, don't be busy. They will clean up after they finish eating. Little girl, please take a rest. We will do it ourselves." Thank you. We will do it ourselves." If the company commander were to find out that these men were being served by a little girl, he would definitely be scolded badly. The four of them were embarrassed to let a little girl do all the work. One by one, they reached out their hands to block her, and the chopsticks on their bowls accidentally fell to the ground. The soldier closest to the chopsticks reflexively wanted to pick them up, but a pair of slender fingers beat him to it and accurately caught the chopsticks in her own hands. Yi Qian put his chopsticks back on the bowl and smiled faintly. "It's not dirty. You don't have to wash it." "Thank you." The younger soldier felt even more embarrassed and thanked him repeatedly. The soldier, who looked to be in his early 30s, smiled at Yi Qian and said cheerfully, "Young lady, your reaction is quite fast. Why don't we sit down and have a bowl of noodles together? You didn't even touch the noodles. Just give me a bowl. I've already eaten, thank you." Yi Qian's smile was very shallow, but when she smiled, there was also a hint of a smile at the corners of her eyes. She looked exceptionally comforting. This was the first time he met her, and he felt that she was a very polite young lady. After generously rejecting the soldier's invitation, Yi Qian turned to Elder Jen and said softly, "Grandpa Jen, I want to discuss something with you in the room." Before the word something could be said, a black shadow rushed out like an arrow. It was so fast that the petals that fell to the ground were swept up a few centimeters into the air. There were obviously other people, but the black shadow rushed in front of Yi Qian. It was so fast that even Elder Jen did not have time to react. Yi Qian did not move, because she could not move. Chapter 7. Not only did the black figure rush in front of her, but it also stood up after letting out a low growl and placed its forelimbs on her shoulders. It was so close that Yi Qian could clearly see that Heiga's sharp canine teeth were stained with blood. A strong smell came from its nose and mouth. It was the Tibetan Mastiff. "Heiga, don't move. Don't move." A few voices came at the same time. It was the 4 soldiers behind Yi Qian. They were telling Yi Qian to calm down and not scream or make any big movements. Yi Qian, who smelled the stench of blood, did not move. Instead, she tried her best to relax her shoulders and slowly adjust her breathing rate. The Tibetan Mastiff could fight a tiger, so it was best for her not to move. Uncle Jen did not move immediately. Instead, he clapped his hands lightly 3 times. Cage, whose fur was standing on end, let out a low growl and bared its fangs ferociously. It looked like it was going to bite Yi Qian's neck in the next second. The man and the dog looked at each other for a few seconds. Jie let out another low growl and moved away from Yi Qian. It obediently leaned against Uncle Jen's side. Yi Qian, whose expression did not change, took a deep breath and finished what she wanted to say with a smile. Grandpa, I have something to tell you in the room. There were many brave people, but not all brave people could be so calm. What was a Tibetan Mastiff? The 4 soldiers sitting there all knew what it was. The Tibetan Mastiff by Uncle Jen's side was the first generation of the Iron General. Its fighting ability, reaction speed, and ferocity were all at the first level. A normal soldier would not be scared to the point of peeing his pants, but his expression would definitely change drastically. This little girl in front of them could still finish her sentence so calmly. It was indeed admirable. Uncle Jen seemed to have guessed something. He looked at the 4 soldiers who were looking at Yi Qian in shock. He nodded and brought Yi Qian to a room with new furniture. Little girl Jian, this room has always been prepared for you. This is your home. As long as you want to come back, you can come back anytime. His simple words instantly touched the softest part of Yi Qian's heart. She turned around and bowed deeply to Uncle Jen. Grandman, thank you. This was a big gift. Coming out of nowhere, it really startled this old revolutionary who had walked through a hail of bullets. His calloused hands firmly supported Yi Qian. He said with a deep voice, Little girl, I can't accept your bow. This is your home. I'm just staying here. As long as you don't come back, of course I have to keep watch for you. He was strong and did not give Yi Qian another bow. Little girl, stand up. Man, if you want to establish yourself, you must first straighten your back. Grandpa Jen, thank you. Yi Qian raised her head and looked at the gray-haired old man who was teaching her how to behave like a family member. Yi Qian will remember your words. Uncle Jen did not ask why Yi Qian suddenly wanted to come back. If he wanted to ask, he would not have tidied up the room so well. Chapter 8. Old Uncle Jen glanced at the empty wooden table and said to Yi Qian in a gentle voice, Girl, you'll know who they are in the future. I can't promise you anything else, but I promise you that you won't be bullied in this house. But she wouldn't let herself be bullied again. Yi Qian nodded lightly. She thought about it seriously and blinked her eyes playfully. Don't worry, I won't say anything. There was no shortage of smart people in this world, but there was a shortage of smart people. Old Uncle Jen laughed loudly and looked at Yi Qian with even more kindness. Okay, Grandpa will wait for you to come home. When Yi Qian walked out, Jie suddenly appeared. Old Uncle Jen smiled at her. Weren't you afraid just now? You weren't scared? A young Tibetan Mastiff was stronger than an adult dog. Yi Qian glanced at it and smiled. I'm not scared. All intelligent dogs can recognize their masters. Girl, you're a brave person. But this isn't a dog, it's a Tibetan Mastiff. A very intelligent one. Old Uncle Jen saw that she was calm and didn't show any fear. He was happy. Let it smell you. It'll recognize you when you come home. He clapped his hands and Jie reacted quickly. It dashed over as if it had received professional training. Come, Haga, smell your little master. Old Uncle Jen bent down and gently stroked Haga's head. He motioned for Yi Qian to reach out her hand and let it recognize her as its master. Yi Qian boldly reached out her hand to Haga's sharp fangs. Jie, I'm Yi Qian. Please take care of me in the future. Recognizing a master wasn't something that could be done quickly. A Tibetan Mastiff would only recognize one master in its lifetime. Only an intelligent Tibetan Mastiff would be able to recognize a second master. Ting didn't approach Yi Qian immediately. Instead, he shook his fur and circled around Yi Qian's feet like an arrogant general. From time to time, he would sniff and whimper. After sniffing and whimpering for at least 3 minutes, it finally lowered its head and rubbed Yi Qian's little feet. Then it lay down meekly. This was a sign that it had recognized its master. Yi Jian was overjoyed that He Jie recognized her as its master, but Sun Dongqing walked around the village for a while. Early in the morning, she was anxious and angry, so she was sweating all over. Damned girl, where did she die? She was always under his nose when he had nothing to do, but when he looked for her for something, she didn't even appear. After looking around, Sun Dongqing stood on the embankment and cursed. With her sharp eyes, she finally saw Yi Jian standing on the bank of a pond above. Her eyes moved slightly. She was originally furious, but now she let out a shrill scream. Jian girl, what are you doing? Come back quickly. Come back quickly. Haida, quick, pull Jian girl back. Damned girl, she's taking things too hard. She's going to jump into the pond. A villager with a hoe on his shoulder happened to pass by the embankment. When he heard this, he was so frightened that he dropped his hoe and stumbled a few times. His hands were like iron pliers as he pulled Yi Qian to the side. He was probably frightened. His strength was so strong that he almost threw himself and Yi Qian into the paddy field below. Uncle Hai, please be careful. Yi Qian reacted quickly. He even pulled the middle-aged man who was about to fall into the paddy field. I just came out of my house. Auntie yelled at me. I was stunned. The middle-aged man felt cold sweat break out on his back. When he heard Yi Qian's words, his expression turned ugly. That auntie of yours is always so noisy. She's almost scared my soul out of me. Chapter 9. Yi Qian quickly apologized. Uncle Hai, I'm sorry. I don't know what my aunt said about me jumping into the pond. Even though I'm young, I know that jumping into the pond will cost me my life. I can do anything else, but I can't do this. Heh, the little girl's spirit has risen after a fall. The middle-aged man laughed when he heard this. He raised his hand and rubbed Yi Qian's head. It's good that she's more spirited. If she's like your aunt, she'll scare me to death sooner or later. Below, Sun Dongqing ran all the way over, shouting, You little girl, don't get me killed. You're so young, yet you don't say anything when something happens. You even know how to jump into the pond. If you die, it'll be a clean slate, but I'll be criticized behind my back for the rest of my life. Who taught you to do such a stupid thing? Jump into the pond, jump into the pond. Stupid girl, if you have the guts to jump into the pond, why don't you have the guts to let the matter rest? Yi Qian saw her shouting and her actions were extremely exaggerated. In order to show that she was really anxious, she purposely missed her foot and stepped into the water field. When she pulled her foot out, she realized that her leather shoe was stuck. She even remembered to pull it out and put it on before running. After running for 2 steps, she fell again. She didn't even have the dust on her body, making it seem like she was really anxious. Her voice was loud and the matter was so serious that the villagers who were busy at home all rushed over. They didn't understand why they came back. They only heard Sun Dongqing's shouting and thought that Yi Qian had done something embarrassing and felt that she was going to jump into the pond. What happened? What happened? Little girl Jian jumped into the pond? How can a child know how to jump into the pond? Quick, go and see what happened. That woman Sun Dongqing is so scared. It was undeniable that Sun Dongqing was really willing to go all out for Yi Ying. She was a smart woman. Yi Qian always knew that he had suffered a lot at her hands in his previous life. But this time, he wanted to make her lose all her face. What's wrong with my aunt today? She looks like she's lost her mind? Why do you look just like my grandfather before he fell ill? Yi Qian muttered softly to himself. He didn't need to be too loud, just loud enough for Uncle Hai, who was picking up the hoe, to hear. He raised his head and looked at Sun Dongqing, who was screaming and jumping as she ran over. He chuckled and joked, Isn't that so? You're crazy. He paused and looked at Yi Qian with a smile. When your grandpa had a relapse, you were only 3 years old. How did you know? Yes, he got sick on the 7th of April. He ran out alone on the 27th of October and found Grandpa in the reservoir at 4 in the afternoon. Yiqian lowered his eyes slightly. His voice was filled with sorrow, and Uncle Hai couldn't help but sigh. He glanced at Sun Dongxing and sighed. This auntie of yours? She's spouting nonsense. Why don't you reply to her? Yiqian smiled bitterly. His whole body was filled with helplessness. He said softly, the innocent knows that they are innocent, and the muddy knows that they are muddy. Uncle Hai, I'll head over first. There are some things that I still need to talk about. I'll go with you. Sai, you're such an honest child. When Uncle Hai saw this, he felt a pang in his heart. Yiqian had no parents, so he wanted to dote on him. On the other side, Sun Dongxing saw that the two famous gossipy women in the village had rushed over. She also saw that Yiqian didn't reply to her criticism as usual. She was secretly pleased with herself. Chapter 10. There were two famous gossipy women in the village. They carried Sun Dongxing to the pond while inquiring about the situation. Two of them wanted to know, while the other wanted to spread rumors. After a while, the villagers who came over knew what was going on. No way, seducing a teacher. Are you serious? Hey, little girl, you're not even fully grown yet, but you already know how to seduce people? Sun Dongxing seemed to be scared out of her wits. She howled, isn't that so? When I came back yesterday, my Yingying didn't dare to say anything, so she pretended to faint. If Yingying hadn't let it slip today, I wouldn't have known about this. I told you, a pretty girl will ruin things. Look, isn't this happening now? She thinks she can seduce people just because she's pretty. Be careful not to lead your Yingying astray. The two gossipy women spoke one after another, convicting Yiqian in just a few sentences. The villagers who didn't know what was going on were stunned when they heard this. They were all skeptical and doubtful. You all know that the Jian girl is mischievous, unlike my Yingying who is honest and only knows how to study. With such a big thing happening, I only hope that the school won't come knocking on our door. Sun Dongxing howled even louder, throwing all the blame on Yiqian. Onto you, I've never thought of myself as pretty, and I've never done anything just because I'm pretty. I really can't bear to hear you say that. What would a little girl like you know? Yiqian walked over and stood in front of them, blocking their way. He raised his voice and said calmly, and Auntie Chiu, you know that I'm not fully grown yet. How could you believe that I seduced a teacher? Your daughter is my classmate. You can ask your daughter Wenli if I seduced a teacher. Have you two seen me seduce a teacher with your own eyes? I, Yiqian, may not have parents, but I know that a teacher is not to be bullied. The best way to fight back was to stand up bravely in the face of rumors and slanders. Yiqian's experience from his previous life allowed him to stand upright in front of them at the age of 14. Her gaze was as clear as the sun at this moment, so clear that it was as if all the darkness could be seen in her eyes, and there was nowhere to hide. Sun Dongxing was stunned when Yiqian stood in front of her and said his first sentence. This wretched girl actually dared to talk back to him, and even talked back in front of the neighbors. After being stunned for a while, he thought to himself, oh no, I'm afraid that this wretched girl is not easy to deal with. Throwing a tantrum and pestering endlessly was her specialty. When she saw that the situation was not right, she cried out, Ayaya, and started to make a fuss. Elder sister, you left a troublemaker with me. She even knows how to talk back. Are you trying to piss me off? Are you trying to piss me off? Aunt Yu and Auntie Chiu were still supporting her on either side. After Yiqian finished speaking, they couldn't help but look embarrassed. When Sun Dongxing started to make a fuss, the two of them tactfully let go of her. She continued to make a fuss. Yiqian looked on coldly, pursed his lips, and calmly said, I was an orphan when I was young. This is something that everyone in the village knows. Auntie, you don't have to talk about it every day. It's precisely because I'm an orphan that I have to be more careful. Because I don't have the qualifications to cause trouble. Chapter 11. When Sun Dongxing heard this, she immediately stood up from the ground. She stopped complaining and slapped her thigh. You dare to talk back? You wretched girl, do you respect me as your aunt? You dare to talk back to your elders like this? I know what kind of person you are. You even dare to talk back to your elders. Seducing a teacher, you think you can't do it? Aunt, you said that I seduced a teacher. Have you verified it? Have you gone to the school to ask? Have the teachers come to our house? Did you ask Ying what's going on? Yi Qian calmly dragged Yi Ying into the conversation. Not only did she stand upright, her words were even more upright. A few villagers that Yi Qian met early in the morning also gathered around. They understood what was going on and started talking about what happened yesterday. Little Jian was in the middle of an exam. What do you mean by seducing a teacher? Wasn't it Ying who dragged Miss Jian away and tripped her? How is this related to seducing a teacher? Sun Dongxing could no longer keep up with Yi Qian's pace, especially when Yi Ying was mentioned. She panicked and wanted to interrupt, but there was no chance. The villagers started talking among themselves and comforted Yi Qian. There's no smoke without fire. You didn't do it, so why would others accuse you? Sun Dongxing was furious. She pulled apart the neighbors around Yi Qian and pointed at Yi Qian. Flies don't bite a flawless egg. If you were a good person, no one would dare to criticize you. Yi Qian looked straight at her and even smiled faintly. No matter how good an egg is, it can't withstand being slandered. Aunt, uncles, and aunts haven't heard of it, but only you know. Your niece wants to ask you, where did you hear about it? How about this? Why don't we confront each other face to face? You are my aunt, my relative. I don't think you want me to be wronged. Yi Qian knew that this was the only way to prevent the villagers from thinking that he was really going against Sun Dongxing. Sun Dongxing, who had made up her mind, clenched her teeth tightly. On the surface, she put on a pained expression as she beat her chest and stomped her feet. Do you know what I've wronged you and what you've done? That damned girl was still being stubborn even now. I want to keep it a secret for you, but can I? When the villagers heard this, they felt that something was amiss. This kind of thing, if Sun Dongxing hadn't told them, they wouldn't have known. The child is still young, how could he do such a thing? Seducing a teacher, how big of a crime was that? Sister-in-law Dongxing, I think you'd better call the person who passed the message over and confront him face to face. That's right, this kind of thing that tarnishes a child's reputation, whoever spouts nonsense is going to suffer 1,000 cuts and 10,000 cuts. Yi Qian stood steadily. His words were loud and clear, without a trace of guilt. His expression was bright, his eyes were clear, and his movements were calm. It was enough to prove that she had been wrongly accused. Confrontation? How could there be a confrontation? Sun Dongxing was secretly gritting her teeth. She glared at Yi Qian with a fierce and gloomy expression. Yi Qian, now that you've grown up, your wings have hardened, haven't you? I haven't grown up, I've just become more sensible. I know the severity of the matter, and I know that I have to stand up for this kind of thing. Seducing a teacher requires a time and place. Since Aunt is so sure that I'm shameless, then you must know everything. Chapter 12. Yi Qian didn't back down and instead advanced. This made Sun Dongxing a little nervous. She said firmly, "Stupid girl. I really took your kindness for granted. Fine, when the teacher comes, I'll see what you say." She couldn't stay here for too long. If she stayed any longer, Sun Dongxing felt that she wouldn't be able to handle it. Stupid girl, did she change her personality in one night? She even knew how to bring the villagers here to testify. She couldn't be bothered with her. Seeing that the situation wasn't right, she, who had always been clever, quickly shook her hand and left while cursing. At this moment, the surrounding villagers all understood what was going on. They all criticized Sun Dongxing for being unreliable. It was Yi Qian's bad luck to have such an aunt. After saying a few words, a few of the more thoughtful people gently nudged the people beside them, indicating that it was better to speak less. Sun Dongxing had a husband who was the deputy mayor of Fujian town. It was said that he might be promoted to mayor this year. Yi Qian, who had calmly observed this scene, lowered his eyes slightly. His long eyelashes gently covered the coldness in the depths of his eyes. She knew who the villagers were afraid of. This was also Yi Ying's capital. With a father who was the deputy mayor, no matter what happened, the school teachers wouldn't go overboard and blame her. As for herself, after the sighing villagers left, Yi Qian gently opened his hand. His palm was delicate and the lines on his palm were clear. It was like the path he wanted to take. In the end, it should be in his own hands. Uncle Yi Jifan was someone she didn't want to go up against at the moment. She understood this man too well. He was a man who didn't care about his own family in his pursuit of power. But he had a weakness. He cared a lot about his reputation. She couldn't directly go up against Yi Jifan now, but she could use his weakness to bring down Sun Dongxing first. Yi Qian, who was standing alone, raised his head. His smile was bright and beautiful. There was nothing to be afraid of, nothing to worry about. The path was in his own hands, and this was a very good start. 14th's smile was bright and carefree, full of vigor. Her beautiful facial features were devoid of any haze, only hope for the future. Her smile was so glaring in Yi Ying's eyes as she walked over. Ying wanted to pounce on her and scratch her face. Yi Jian, who had always been sensitive, calmly stopped smiling when she saw the malicious gaze behind her, which was as sharp as a needle. She turned around and looked at Yi Ying, who was glaring at her. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She looked at her condescendingly and disdainfully. Yi Ying, who was standing a few steps away, was a meticulous person. After she understood what was going on, her expression changed drastically, and anger rushed to the top of her head. Yi Qian. She gritted her teeth and growled in a low voice. She took a few steps forward and stretched out her hand to push Yi Qian away as if he was at home. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a few villagers looking over. She reacted quickly and immediately put on a sisterly expression. She reached out and placed her hand on Yi Qian's shoulder. Ying, you disgust me, and I disgust you as well. Yi Qian avoided her easily and didn't let her act disgust him even more. He chuckled coldly and said, "You know what I mean. Don't put on an act for others to see." In the eyes of the villagers, Yi Ying from the deputy mayor's family had always been obedient. She was good-looking, good at her studies, and had a good personality. Chapter 13. I'd like to see if you've really changed. Yi Ying couldn't be bothered to keep up the act. She wasn't the scheming Yi Ying anymore. Yi Ying couldn't be bothered to keep up the act. She was no longer the scheming Yi Ying. Yi Ying couldn't be bothered to keep up the act. She pulled a long face and said fiercely, "You eat my food and live in my house. You're worse than a dog when you leave my house." Yi Qian looked at her. His dark eyes were like the calm sea, vast and boundless, but also extremely deep and cold. Ying swallowed uncomfortably and stammered, What are you looking at?" She then smiled faintly and said slowly, "Go home and ask your mother where the food I eat and use comes from. Also, Ying, you better remember this. You're the one who's worse than a dog when you leave my house. I'll see you on Monday." Monday, Fujian Town Middle School's second-year mock exam. Don't underestimate this town's middle school. Due to the presence of a military unit, the curriculum was very strict. At the mention of Monday, Yi Ying's face froze. She was angry, but she also felt that she had suffered a great injustice. Her pair of watery eyes were like pearls, dripping down drop by drop. "Sis, I was wrong. I was wrong. Don't be angry, okay?" Yi Ying's heart was filled with hatred, but she immediately admitted her mistake. She was like a temperamental child who could easily be forgiven by an adult. Yi Qian glanced at the hand tugging at his sleeve and looked over with a half-smile. "I've seen plenty of two-faced people. The more you hate me now, the more aggrieved your expression is. I know what you told your mother." As Yi Qian spoke, he suddenly leaned over slightly. His dark eyes were cold as he carefully stared at the flustered Ying. "So, the reason you dragged me away yesterday was because you were seducing the new math teacher." Yi Ying, who was flustered, heard this and felt guilty. In order to cover up the truth, she raised her voice and said sharply, "Nonsense. You know very well whether I'm talking nonsense or not." Yi Qian raised his hand and patted the back of Yi Ying's hand gently. He smiled faintly. Yi Ying, you've never been good at language. You definitely didn't remember this sentence. At that moment, Yi Ying felt as if something was branded on the back of her hand that had been slapped. She was so scared that she quickly flung her hand away. She then looked at Yi Jian, who was clearly smiling faintly. She seemed to be the same as before, but there was something vaguely different about her. Yi Jian's dark eyes looked at her, and there seemed to be a slight smile, but she saw more coldness. Yi Jian. Yi Ying wanted to raise her voice as usual, but when she opened her mouth, she realized that her voice was trembling. I'm going to tell my dad. You bullied me. You bullied me. Yi Ying saw that Yi Qian, who had always acted weak in front of her and whom she looked down on, left without looking back. She was anxious and scared, and she cried even harder. Chapter 14. When Yi Ying chased after her, she happened to see Sun Dongxing talking to village chief Zhang Difu, who had gone to the town government office early in the morning. She vaguely heard her mother asking about the town's middle school teacher. Yi Qian, who was in front of her, turned around and naturally heard it too. He looked at Yi Ying with a half-smile. He didn't say anything, but it made Yi Ying's hair stand on end. Isn't there a new math teacher in the city? I heard that. Hearing this, Yi Ying forgot to cry. Like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, she shrieked, "Mom, what are you asking about all day?" Yi Ying, who had a guilty conscience, was most afraid of mentioning the teacher. Her sudden shriek made Sun Dongxing's heart skip a beat. What are you shrieking about? All day long play. Do you think you're a concubine? I'll take care of you. If you were a concubine, you'd still be living here. It sounded like she was criticizing Yi Ying, but she was actually scolding Yi Qian indirectly. Yi Qian just smiled and pretended not to hear. Yi Zhifan wasn't back yet. With a guilty Yi Ying around, seducing the teacher wouldn't cause a stir in the village for the time being. Sun Dongxing saw Yi Qian's nonchalant expression, as if he didn't care about her at all. She, who had finally calmed down, felt a sharp pain in her heart. She rolled her eyes and sneered, "Oh, you're back to pack your things and leave. That's right, my house is small, how can it accommodate a big Buddha like you?" Her original intention was to threaten Yi Qian. "Stupid girl, let's see if you still dare to talk back to me. How dare you be naughty? Without this house, where can you go?" Village Chief Zhang Difu was already frowning. He wanted to ask a few more questions, but he saw Yi Qian's eyes fill with tears. His eyeballs were about to fall out. He sobbed and said, "Aunt, how long are you going to accuse me? What's seducing the teacher? If I admit to this baseless accusation, will I still be able to live? And I beg you, please give me a way out." With that, Yi Qian covered his face and ran away. She still had to go to the neighboring village to look for her classmate, Zhang Bin, who had handed in the papers with her yesterday. Back then, the matter of her seducing her teacher was settled as soon as she woke up. When she woke up from the fall, she was scared silly. By the time she came back to her senses, everything was settled. Only Zhang Bin, who had handed in the papers one after the other, was the only one who stood up for him. Yi Qian looked as if she had suffered a great grievance and even ran away with tears in her eyes. Sun Dongxing and Yi Ying were dumbfounded. Village Chief Zhang Difu couldn't stand it and said unhappily, "Jifan's wife, Jifan only has one niece. You're his aunt. Do you think you're speaking like an elder?" After saying that, he flung his sleeves and left. Sun Dongxing was so angry that she slapped her thigh and cursed herself for being so unlucky. She also said that she was so nice to Yi Qian. Anyway, after Yi Qian covered his face and left, she couldn't explain herself anymore. Yi Qian, who had already gone to the neighboring village, couldn't hear them. Even if he did, she wouldn't take it to heart. She didn't take the main road, which was a waste of time. Instead, she took a small path that only required her to climb over a mountain. When spring came, all the hibernating animals came out. Even the hibernating snakes started to come out. Yi Qian casually picked up a twig that was 2 fingers thick. It wasn't to ward off snakes. She wasn't afraid of snakes since she was young. Holding the twig in her hand was just a habit. Chapter 15. The flowers on the mountain were in full bloom. As they walked along the mountain path, the white birch trees blocked out the spring sun. Deeper into the mountain, Yiqian could see an iron fence that stretched along with the mountain. This was a fence set up by the troops stationed deep in the mountains to prevent civilians from trespassing into the restricted area for fear of accidentally injuring the children in the mountains. Halfway up the mountain, Yiqian heard the rustling of leaves. Someone was walking in the mountains. It was normal for villagers to walk in the mountains, but Yiqian felt unreasonably nervous. He instinctively hid under a tree and covered himself completely. Gently brushing aside the bushes, Yiqian saw 3 unfamiliar men carrying something on their shoulders. They seemed to be searching for something. F***CK, that kid took the money and didn't do anything. What can we get from this place? The man who spoke was only in his mid-20s, but he was the shortest of the 3. He carefully placed the thing on his shoulder against the tree. We have to climb up. The tallest man was probably tired from walking and leaned against a white birch tree to rest. Let's take a break. F***CK, we've been walking in this deep forest for days. If we can't do it, we can go down the mountain and find a farmer to get some food. If you're not afraid of death, then go down the mountain and get some food. The man with a pair of gloomy eyes, who was of average height and also the strongest, snorted coldly. He reached into his pocket and took out a cigarette. He sniffed it and put it back into the cap. Let's go. Let's go up. If we can't complete the task, we'll be starving for the rest of the month. The other 2 men obviously only listened to him. When he said to go, they immediately packed up and left. The shorter man was struggling to carry the thing, so he said to the taller man, "Give me a cannon barrel. My shoulders are peeling." Cannon barrel? Camera lens? When the shorter man took out the thing from the waterproof canvas bag, Yiqian's pupils constricted. It really was a camera lens. And it was not an ordinary lens. It was an imported lens that cost at least tens of thousands. In a split second, Yiqian guessed what they had said before and instantly understood what these people wanted to do by carrying expensive lenses in the mountains for a few days. They were here for the troops deep in the mountains. They wanted to steal the military secrets. Yiqian, who was supposed to go to the neighboring village, was stunned. If they really wanted to film the troops, they had to go to Eagle Beak Cliff, which would take at most an hour from here. If she went down the mountain to find Grandpa Jen, he would definitely have a way of contacting the troops. The tall man put one of the heaviest lenses into his bag and said sarcastically, "Don't plant seeds on women. If you have time, learn from Brother Lu. Go to the gym and walk around." The tall man put it aside and reached for his belt. As he unbuckled his belt, he said, "I'm going to pee. You can put it in yourself." Yiqian, who had been holding on to the tree branch, clenched her fists. The man was coming in her direction. Yiqian looked around quickly. She was no longer squatting. She slowly walked around the tree until she reached the back. She shrunk her shoulders and tried to use the tree trunk to block her. Yiqian held her breath. She was so sensitive to smells that after a few days, she could smell even the slightest bit of residual scent. A jet-black snake slithered down from the tree branch, then slowly slithered towards the feet of the man who was dealing with an urgent matter in his life. The man, who was shivering comfortably, lowered his head and looked at the snake. He was so frightened that he screamed and stepped back. Chapter 16. If they couldn't hide, then there was no need to hide anymore. If they continued to hide, it would only boost the other party's morale and put them at a disadvantage. Walking out from behind the tree, Yiqian glanced at the 3 people indifferently. "I've startled you guys." She flicked the branch lightly at the snake's body and threw it into the air. She then raised her hand and grabbed the falling snake. "Oh shit! Oh shit! F***CKU." The tall man who was frightened by the snake saw a mountain girl whose face was still covered in mud walk out from behind the tree. She nimbly picked up the snake and threw it into the air. Then she grabbed it lightly. The black snake, which was at least 50 centimeters long, twisted in her hand. The snake's 7 inches were pinched and its entire body wrapped around Yiqian's arm. She didn't use any strength and gently wrapped it around the snake like it was a tree branch. Kugong snake, highly venomous. You didn't get bitten. You're lucky. Yi Qian grabbed the snake's head and skillfully opened the snake's mouth, exposing the venomous fangs hidden in its upper and lower jaws. Good fangs, good venom. It can be used as medicine. It's worth a lot of money. The three men's scalps went numb at the sight. *CK. Didn't the children in the mountains play with toy snakes? Did they play with real snakes? The tall man was so scared that he didn't even buckle his belt properly. *CKU, you're scared out of your wits. The man in the lead quietly placed his hand behind his back before gently retracting it. He stared darkly at the girl in front of him, whose face was so dirty that he couldn't even see her facial features. After sizing her up for a while, he squeezed out a question and asked, "Little girl, where are your parents?" Yi Qian, who used to work in a top security company, narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw him pull his hand back. This person had a gun on him and it was behind his waist. Bitten by a snake. I couldn't save her. With one hand holding the snake, Yi Qian replied coldly. She calmly walked away from the leader and let the shortest man stand in front of her. Using the man in front of her as a human shield would at least make her safer. Even if the opponent had a gun, she could still escape. Not only was he bold, but he was also extraordinarily calm. The short man who was closest to Yi Qian raised his hand and blocked Yi Qian's path. "Little girl, you want it?" Yi Qian did not let him finish his sentence. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the venomous snake with its mouth wide open suddenly moved closer to the other party's eyes. "If you want it, sure. I caught the snake. Pay for it." Her movements were so fast that the short and small man was so frightened that he shuddered and took a few steps back. He gasped and shouted, "****, you scared me to death. Who the hell wants to buy it?" The mountain path was only so wide, and he bumped into the leader, who was unprepared for the sudden retreat of his men. Crush! Both of them fell into the bushes on the side of the road. The leader who fell accidentally revealed the gun at his waist. This made Yi Qian's pupils contract. He nimbly turned around and walked down the mountain. When the tallest man saw his men fall into a mess, he, who had gathered his courage to stop Yi Qian, hurriedly shouted, "Brother Kuan!" ***CK. Brother Kuan, who was the cushion, fell until his face turned black. The guy who was on top of him was still scrambling to get up. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the village girl who caught the snake walking down the mountain. Brother Kuan fiercely shouted, "Stop her!" Chapter 17. All snakes were agile. As long as their weak spots were not pinched, they were extremely aggressive, especially poisonous snakes. The free Mr. Crow moved its body and opened its mouth wide, biting Brother Kuan's arm. Brother Kuan, who was bitten, grabbed the Mr. Crow snake and threw it into the forest. He gritted his teeth and said, "Get them back here. This stupid girl knows what we're talking about." It was not easy to catch up with Yi Qian. After her first accident in her past life, she had developed the habit of running in the morning to make her body stronger. She had a strong personality and never stopped running even if it was raining or snowing. Otherwise, how could the boss of the security company, who also ran every day, let her into the security company when she did not have an identity card and a household register? A 28-year-old soul and a 14-year-old body combined so well. The mountain wind blew past her face and the trees behind her. She was able to shake him off from afar. It took less than 10 minutes to run from the mountainside to the foot of the mountain, but Yi Qian did not choose to run on the mountain path. Instead, she ran into the forest. The sound of leaves rustling made one of the soldiers raise his hand and cover his comrades who were scouting. "Someone's here," he said softly. The sound of leaves rustling suddenly reached his eyes. She was extremely fast and rushed out like a chamois in the forest. She bumped into the muzzle of the soldier's gun. Yesterday at around 5 o'clock in the morning, the soldiers patrolling the mountain discovered traces of someone squatting in the mountain. Until today, the person was still searching. Just in case, their group steel guns were not equipped with bumpers. They could shoot directly. Yi Jian's forehead bumped right into the muzzle of the gun. She did not get scared, but the soldier who was holding the gun was scared out of his wits. "You little girl." The soldier who broke out in cold sweat recognized Yi Qian, whose face was covered in dirt. He quickly put away his gun and said, "Go back quickly. Don't come to the mountain to play for the next few days." The patrolling soldiers had to remember which children lived in the villages in the area they were patrolling. Yi Qian's makeshift face was easily recognized by the soldiers. Then he saw that Yi Qian's forehead had a round bullet hole. The soldier wanted to laugh, but he didn't want to be too serious. He lowered his head and quickly took out a spray from his sanitary bag. "Spray it on his forehead. It's all red." Yi Qian, whose vision was blacked out, did not take the spray. Instead, he said to the soldier in combat uniform, "There are 3 people with imported lens equipment. They are 500 meters above us. One of the leaders is called Brother Kuan, and he was bitten by Yugong's snake." Yi Qian raised his hand to rub his aching forehead. He finished speaking in one breath, without the slightest pause. "Stay here and protect her. The rest of you follow me." Yi Jian, who was rubbing her forehead, heard a voice that sounded like gold and jade coming from below. The man's voice was clean and low, and it was a voice that could be used in a golden palace. Yi Qian lowered his eyes and looked down. "Yes, sir." Among the orderly responses, Yi Qian saw an exceptionally young man with 2 bars and a star on his collar. The man's back was facing him as he stood against the light. He was very tall. His straight back looked like a pine tree that was about to soar into the clouds under the warm spring sun. He was steady, cold, and exuded a majestic aura. Chapter 18. On his body, there were 2 different auras. One was noble and the other was cold and ruthless. However, the 2 of them seemed to blend together naturally. Yi Qian lowered his head and said, "I don't need protection. I'll lead the way." She had never looked at a man with such a strong aura, one so strong that it seemed as though he could devour the weak. It was as though if he looked at her one more time, all of her secrets would be exposed, leaving her with nowhere to hide. The soft sound of the military boots stepping on the bushes made people's scalps tighten involuntarily. "How are you going to protect yourself? And how are you going to lead the way?" The young man stood in front of Yi Qian. His voice was slightly raised, and there was a hint of a smile in it. It was faint, but like the morning breeze, it blew away the cold and ruthless aura around him. Jin Yu's voice suddenly became clear and refreshing, and the cold and sharp aura around him dissipated the moment he opened his mouth. How could there be someone who could so easily change his aura in an instant? Yi Qian raised his head in shock and saw Zhang Ning's handsome face that stunned Shiguang. Every part of him was exquisite, every part of him was elegant. Even the faint smile at the corner of his lips was like the sun beside the clouds. It made it hard for people to grasp their hearts. Even if they had to give everything they had, they would still be willing to do so. If this man had a few more years, his aura would be so strong that one would feel pressured just by looking at him. Under his aura, they would lower their heads uncontrollably and submit to him unconsciously. "I naturally have my own ways." Yi Qian looked at him and said calmly. No matter how handsome or noble a man was, it was enough to just look at him. "I'll lead the way. It will save you a lot of time. Also, that man called Kuanji has a gun on him. You guys be careful. Naturally, I have my own ways." Because the other party was a little girl, the man who had a rare smile on his face for fear of scaring her heard those words. But when he heard that, his eyes gradually darkened. His thin lips were no longer smiling, and he appeared exceptionally cold and stern. Even the cold air that he had restrained was slightly released once again. Yi Qian, who did not avoid his gaze, continued to stare at him. He saw the young soldier's dark eyes, which were as vast as the night sky, gradually turn cold. The faint smile in his eyes disappeared, and when he spoke again, his voice was deep and cold. "Little girl, protecting yourself is not just for show. As for leading the way..." Xia Jinyuan knew that the elders in the mountains would often guide the soldiers in the army, but he had never let a teenage girl lead the way. In his eyes, Yi Qian was still a little girl. However, in her eyes, he was just a young soldier in his early 20s. Yiqian chuckled and said indifferently, "Major, you should choose to believe me instead of standing here and talking to me." The young major's black eyes, which were as sharp as an eagle's, sized up the little girl in front of him who had her back ramrod straight. Then he nodded his head. He seemed to be admiring her, but there was also a deeper meaning behind his words. He said indifferently, "You are very bold." He walked past Yiqian and ordered the soldiers who stayed behind, "Escort her down the mountain. Before the suspect is found, seal the mountain." Although he was young, he was already an officer with real power. Yiqian, who did not back down because of this, turned around and looked at the major straight back. He smiled slightly. Kuenji was bitten by the crow snake I threw out. If it isn't dealt with in an hour, his life will soon be in danger. Major, can you find him within an hour? Chapter 19. Xia Jinyuan had never been threatened like this in his entire life. He did not expect that the young girl in front of him would be so bold as to follow them into the mountains. The sun shone through the leaves and scattered sparsely. Standing in the mottled light, the girl had a pair of dark eyes that were filled with tenacity. They were dark and had an all-encompassing coldness. The expression in the girl's eyes did not match her age. It was quite appropriate to describe her as mature. The determination in her eyes made him feel a little reluctant to reject her. "Little girl, if you want to lead the way, you have to follow us yourself. Lu Bing, take care of her." Xia Jinyuan did not choose to believe that she would lead the way because he did not want to continue talking to this young and mature girl. He wanted to take her to the mountains and let her know what danger was. Only then would she be completely obedient. His strides were huge. Dressed in a combat uniform and army camouflage, he held onto a bush with one hand and jumped lightly. His arched back made him look like a ferocious beast that had its eyes on its prey in the forest. The soldier who was left behind, Lu Bing, took off his helmet and laughed. "Little girl, you actually have the guts to threaten Captain Xia. Fortunately, you are not his soldier. Otherwise..." He took off his helmet and placed it directly on Yiqian's head. "Otherwise, you would have to fix it. Wear your hat and follow closely." Captain Xia was referring to the young major. What was there to be afraid of? She naturally had her own reasons for bringing it up. Yiqian did not even have the chance to refuse to wear his helmet. He held onto the bush with both hands and followed closely behind her. There are traces of squatting here. There are traces of a tripod. Take a picture of this as well. Yiqian quickly caught up and saw the soldier who was supposed to be chasing the criminal and the man called Captain Xia standing together. He pointed to a spot and a soldier took a picture with his camera. Xia Jinyuan had already heard the rustling of the bushes behind him. He was a little surprised. The little girl was quite wild. She caught up so quickly. "I met them a little on the other side. But they're gone now." Yiqian pointed at the slope in front of them and pursed his lips. "However, I'm sure they won't dare to walk up the mountain." After being bitten by a snake, walking on the mountain was a dead end. Xia Jinyuan obviously understood what she meant. He turned to look at her and smiled faintly. "That's right, so we can collect evidence first." All signals in the surrounding area had been blocked. It was impossible for the people who had escaped into the mountains to send out information or call for help. Although this was a man with a cold aura, when he smiled, he was indeed very charming. Yiqian had always thought that she was not a woman who would be dazzled by a man, but at this moment, she could not help but take another look. The cool mountain breeze blew over, and when it blew away the flash of light for a moment, it also carried a trace of smell. Holding her breath, Yiqian took another light breath. Her eyes suddenly lit up and shone with a diamond-like light. She took a few light steps to Xia Jinyuan's side and said in a youthful voice, "How much longer do you need to collect evidence? They haven't gone too far. We can catch up with them immediately." Xia Jinyuan's intimidating black eyes were sharp as he looked indifferently at the girl who was only a fist away from him. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.